But his servants came near and said to him, "My father, it is a great word the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean.
All right, hi everyone, and welcome to Southern. So great to see so many smiling faces here. Let's see if we can get that. Cool. So tonight we're looking at the first of Southern's theme for the year, which is life-changing moments, which is a super cool topic. And I'm sure throughout this year we're going to learn a lot. So we'll start with the question, what are life-changing moments? The committee defined it as life-changing moments are often or relating to meaningful life events concerning your career, family, friend groups, relationships, education, opportunities, home circumstances, etc. So by looking at life-changing moments throughout this year in Southern, you're going to see how characters in the Bible transformed. You're going to see how God worked in their lives to transform them into someone better. And hopefully from this, you can recognise little moments in your life where you can develop to become more like Christ. You can make those changes in your life without having to undergo a huge life-changing moment. And maybe you can understand other people a bit better and what they're going through. So tonight I'm going to be looking at Naaman, and Zach will be looking at Nicodemus. So these are 2 very powerful men, and both had life-changing moments that brought them very close to God. So Naaman's name, it's only mentioned once. So if we can all turn to Luke chapter 4. Once in the New Testament, that is, sorry. So Luke chapter 4. And in verse 27, we read, "And there were many lepers in Israel at the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them were cleansed, but only Naaman the Syrian." Only Naaman was cleansed at this time. This shows how special this story was. All the other lepers at this time, they weren't cleansed, only Naaman. So there's something special about this man. So who was Naaman? In the reading we took tonight, 2 Kings chapter 5, hopefully you picked that up, we learn a lot about this man, Naaman. So from verse 1, we read, well, his name, it means pleasantness or beauty. But from verse 1, we read, he was a commander of the army of the king of Syria. He was a great man. He was in high favour. God was with him. He was a mighty man of valour. So this is a pretty impressive resume. He had everything. He had wealth, recognition, honour and power. He was a great man. But at the end of verse 2, it says, but he was a leper. This was the one negative in his life that really humbled him. The only downside of this great man was he was a leper. And what was leprosy? Well, it included a variety of skin diseases, and in which patients they would have disfigurement of the skin, and they would lose colour in the skin in spots, and they'd get thick, glossy, scaly, then they'd turn into dirty sores, and it was very infectious and contagious. So here's this guy whose name means beauty, and he's got this disease that is far from beautiful. And then in verse 2, we meet our second character, who is instrumental in his transformation, the handmaid. And from verse 2, we learn a lot about this little girl. We learn that she was a servant for Naaman's wife. She was young, She had lost everything: her parents, her home, her friends, and her freedom. She was a slave. She was from Israel, and at this time, King Jeroboam set up golden calves so his people wouldn't have to travel up to Jerusalem, to the temple each year. So she was from Israel in a wicked time. She had seen, or at least heard, of the miracles that Elisha had performed. She worked hard, and it was because she worked hard that Naaman was able to trust her enough to go to the leader of Syria. She trusted in God. She had faith that Naaman could be healed. And it's because of this faith that Naaman was able to be healed. And then the last one, Naaman was like a father to her. If you come to 2 Kings chapter 5, our reading for tonight, and verse 13, it says, "But his servants came near and said to him, 'My father, it is a great word that the prophet has spoken.'" It doesn't say directly, but perhaps this is the young maid, the handmaid of Naaman. There's a quote in Genius Discipleship, the book, and it says, "The faith of one disciple can help another." That's why Hebrews 11 is so good for us. Perhaps your confession of trust can help someone facing adversity, anxious and smitten. Sometimes trust is infectious. Your faith, everyone's faith here, can be infectious to those around you. Because of the little handmaid, Naaman was healed. Because of her faith, he was healed. That would have instilled in the people. It would have been infectious seeing this young boy fight the giant. Think of Paul and Silas singing in prison, the impact on the jailer and the rest of the prisoners. And with that, we come to our first key takeaway for tonight. So we're going to have 3 key takeaways throughout my talk, and this is the first one. Faith is infectious. Faith isn't age dependent, no matter how young you are. Some of you will be 15, some 20, some 18, and everything in between. So faith, it's not age dependent. We sang in our first song, Yahweh's Youth. Let's be his youth in the ecclesia, in youth group. Let's be infectious, our faith. Let's infect those around us. You've got Naaman, this guy with leprosy, this infectious disease just oozing out from him. And then in contrast, you've got this young handmaid who had an infectious faith that impacted everyone around her. So just have a think. How can your faith be infectious to the people around you? So we read in the story that Naaman goes to the king of Syria, who sends a letter to the king of Israel, and Elisha is known. And then in verse 9, we'll skip down to verse 9, where it says, "Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes." That's verse 8. We'll skip to verse 9. "So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, 'Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be made clean.' So instantly Elisha sends his servant to the door. Naaman was shown immediately God didn't care for his greatness, his position, his wealth, or his might. Elisha just sends a servant. And how did Naaman react? Verse 11. "Naaman was angry and went away, saying, 'Behold, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord, his God, and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper.'" Now the key words in this verse, I thought. Naaman had already conjured up in his own mind of how his miraculous cure should have taken place. He wanted to get healed his way. But God doesn't succumb to this. God has a lesson he wants to teach Naaman along the way. So for us, we can't come to God on our own terms, how we want to. Often we come to God, we already have a solution in mind of how we want things to play out. But we've got to trust that God He has something better in store for us, even if at the time it's not what we want. So, verse 13, we've already read it tonight, but read it again. For you